Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking Down the Political System. I'm Garrett Lafferty, your host. I'm joined today by Danny Stewart and Beth Murphy. We will be covering a variety of topics on this show, but first I just want to get an introduction to the show and what it's all about. We run a page called Fuck Politics on Facebook. We have over 2,000 likes as of a couple weeks ago or so, and we post a lot of things that are anti-government, anarchist kind of style, funny memes, things like that. So I hope you guys join us every week. And I'm Garrett Lafferty. I've been running that page since the beginning. I've also ran a page called Statism and Slavery for a while, along with Michael Shanklin, the creator of the Voluntary Virtues Network, which we're broadcasting on right now. I've been working towards anarchism for about maybe a year and a half now or so. I'm really interested in things like gold and silver and economics. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. I'd like to pass this over to Danny and let him brag about himself.
All right, I don't know if there's going to be much bragging, but I'll try to explain a little bit about myself. My name is Danny. It might say Brad Freeman on the stream, but that's because I got a YouTube channel now that I'm going to start. I'm working on a couple videos right now to get started, and it's basically a gaming channel. You guys can catch me there. So it'll be under Brad Freeman, and it's the NAP Gamer. So I'm going to basically be doing things where if I'm in a game that involves the ability to do violence, okay, I will abstain from that as much as possible in order to kind of give the idea of using the non-aggression principles. So don't attack unless I'm attacked, or don't defend myself, or don't use force unless I've been attacked. So I think it's going to create some interesting gameplay situations, and so you guys can join me there when I upload a couple videos. I'm still working on recording and editing, so check it out. Check it out then.
Awesome, awesome. Beth, you want to introduce yourself? Let the audience know a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. My name's Beth Murphy. I'm from Canada, and I've only heard about the movement like almost a year ago, not even. And most of the reason why I'm interested in it is that I've learned a lot about the food crisis, and that's more my angle on things, I guess.
Sweet. So we have a variety of kind of perspectives on this show. We're going to be looking to bring in guests, so if anybody is interested to come and talk about topics, you're welcome to come and message us at the page or directly on my Facebook profile. So with that all being said, let's move on straight into our first topic. Danny, you brought this one this week. It's a really heated issue up here in Canada.
I bet.
So why don't you tell us about it?
Well, this is about Justin Burke, the Moncton shooting guy. Now, apparently he has been arrested. If you guys haven't been following this story, basically he was approached. He was walking down the street with some of his weapons on his back and stuff like that. There are a couple of pictures showing him, I believe, and he was walking and basically was approached by was it 3 Mounties? Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Approached.
It was more than 3.
More than 3, yeah. But he ended up. They ended up telling him to stand down. Is that correct? And basically he said nope and shot 3 of them. So yeah, what's your thoughts on this incident, Garrett?
Uh,
Since you're from Canada,
uh, yeah,
I brought it up.
we or we, I say we, but people in Canada have been mourning the loss of these officers by putting their flags at half-mast this week, and it's a real story up here. People are pretty upset. I've brought this topic up with friends of mine, and they've said that's why we need a government, because things like that will happen. My perspective on it, this guy, he was, I really don't know what his thinkings were, but when you create a law where you say nobody can have guns open in public, which is the law in Canada, you can't have any loaded weapon anywhere in public unless you're part of either the military or part of the police force.
Wow.
So when they say if you are going to be out in public with this, and we're going to stop you by gunpoint, things like this are bound to happen, where you're going to get violent conflict. You know, I don't know. What's your take on it, Danny?
Well, I think if you I mean, the second you tell somebody not to do something is the moment they're going to begin doing it, right? So that's one thing, right? And now, I mean, that's just kind of like a psychological thing. But in terms of the actual philosophy regarding it, I mean, obviously, I mean, you should be able to carry guns wherever you want. There's studies that show that more guns in an area actually is kind of almost like has an inoculation effect, like, you know, so basically anybody who's thinking of committing a crime will be less likely to do so because they know that area has weapons.
Right. That's why we see so many mass shootings in gun-free zones, right?
Exactly.
They know that nobody's there.
Right, and it's kind of like just a common sense thing, right? I mean, you would think it's a complete common sense thing that, you know, yeah, if I was a criminal, I would be very wary of areas where I know there's a lot of, you know, where there's gun racks on every car, right? I would be very careful of an area like that, and I probably wouldn't go in and attack that area, and I would look for all the areas that don't have a large presence of guns. It just makes sense. But again, there's studies where they show that this is what criminals think about before they commit their crimes. So it's just, I mean, obviously that's kind of the base, you know, philosophical
so
outlook on it.
What do you think of the hero title that these police officers are getting?
Oh man, it's really terrible. I mean, obviously we all know, anyone who's watching this show, if you don't, the government is a group of individuals that claim a monopoly on the right to initiate force within a given geographic location. Basically, that means the government is a mafia. It's not it's not a humanitarian, you know, group. It's not a group for the people. It's not, you know, it's just basically a mafia. There's no really other way to look at it. And so you can't really say that these guys are heroes when basically the group that they joined is a mafia. It's like saying that Al Capone was a hero. It's literally like saying that. I mean, or like one of his, like 3 of his cronies who got killed in a turf war, you know, that was somehow they're heroes. It's bogus, complete bogus.
Right. I get brought back to the story that happened in Edmonton, a city a couple hours north of me. A couple of years ago, there was Brinks security officers, something like Brinks. They were delivering cash to an ATM in the middle of the night, and 3 of them got murdered. And in my, I think it was 3. It was a couple of them. It was either 2 or 3 of them. And in my opinion, those people deserved a lot more of a hero worship than the police officers do, because police officers are not voluntary, right? They're not paid through voluntary transactions. I don't pay them with my consent. It gets taken away from me by force whenever I get a paycheck or whenever I buy something. So when it comes to the security guards, they're working voluntarily for a service. They provide a service that people want, and everybody who is paying them, they want it. You wouldn't pay the security officers if you didn't want them, right?
Right.
And
right.
they get gunned down out of nothing. But we don't hear anything about that. We don't hear the whole country putting flags at half-mast, whatever that's supposed to mean anyways.
Right.
Like, I just think there's a lot more dangerous professions out there that provide an actual service, rather than people who are putting people in cages for doing peaceful things like smoking pot, or they jaywalked across a street. If they don't want to pay if they don't want to stop and get their ticket, the cop's going to arrest them and make them get their ticket,
or trying to start a business in your garage, like all this crazy regulations and stuff, just absolutely insane. I mean, and just being young in this environment, how does that feel to you, Beth? Because we're all pretty young. I'm 24. I don't know how old are you, Garrett?
20.
And you, Beth?
19.
Okay, so how is it being young in this kind of environment where there's all these oppressive, I mean, quite literally oppressive regulations and crazy rules, just stuff that just doesn't make any sense? How does it feel to be in a situation like that? Specifically in your profession, for instance, which is chef, correct?
Yeah, it's well, I don't know. On one hand, like, if like, I don't know, people are gonna do what they're gonna do, right? So instead of being out on the street for the most part, they're doing it in their houses or in their garages or whatever. So like, there's obviously a need to hide what you're doing, even though what you're doing is completely innocent, right? And I just don't think that's like a good, like, I don't know, we shouldn't have to hide away to do everything we want to do, right?
Yeah, there's a good book. Well, I can't say it's a good book. I actually haven't read it, but I have listened to the gentleman who did write it. It's called, I believe, Everything I Want to Do is Illegal. And the guy is a farmer. Everything I Want to Do is Illegal by Joel Salatin. I heard him on Tom Woods one time, and I believe he's a farmer, and that's kind of what he talks about. It was like, how crazy all of the it's called Everything I Want to Do is Legal, War Stories from the Local Food Front. So and apparently he basically talks about all these different regulations and rules that ends up actually causing a lot of harm, and I mean, I would assume even death, because of the way that food's handled in this world by the government. So do you have any extra thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of the things that the government does, they're being influenced by, large companies that are lobbying for, decisions to be made. Like, for example, there's Monsanto, who owns most of the most of where people can get like the means to plant their farms, like the seeds and stuff. Monsanto owns all of that, and they've genetically modified quite a lot of it to be so that the farmers are dependent on, like, essentially it's a monopoly. They've created a monopoly over farmers, and they've used the government to also legally enforce the monopoly, right?
Right, exactly. Through patents on the seeds and stuff like that, and saying that that you can't plant this certain crop because you've agreed, or you've this seed, it doesn't work with that, or like,
They are at the
you know,
mercy of Monsanto because, like, Monsanto even takes that you're going to go and grow wheat, so, well, you're going to buy your seeds from Monsanto, and Monsanto's genetically modified them so that the next generation of, like, that generation of wheat, which you're planting, is sterile. So that you then have to, the next year, go back to Monsanto and buy it again. You cannot reuse your seeds.
Well, I've actually heard that that's not actually the case. Is this? I've actually checked it out before. That they don't have that kind of sterile seed. It's just that they don't they maybe don't want you to do it. Is that the case, or?
No, like, it's like even the canola. You can only get one generation from plants from them.
Interesting. Interesting.
oh, so like the plants won't grow back, the ones that you buy from them?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Strange. Yeah, Monsanto. Monsanto is a
Actually,
very. I have something really funny to say about Monsanto. I'm working at a job right now where I'm spraying Roundup. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Roundup before. Yeah, basically it's a herbicide and kills plants and stuff like that. And this Roundup is also the same thing that they used to use. Well, it comes from the same company, right? It comes from Monsanto, which also helped create Agent Orange back in the day. And Agent Orange was sprayed over Vietnam to make the foliage go away and have the
It's so the people couldn't hide in the jungle.
right,
Right.
exactly, yeah.
The foliage so that they could find the enemy.
Mhm. So this is a quick conversation then. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
well,
Me spraying just hear me out for a second here. Me spraying that it poisons the environment, kind of, sort of. It has the negative externalities, right?
right.
With being anarcho-capitalists, libertarians, voluntarists, we like to think that property rights are important, and that if you're poisoning somebody else's property and affecting their property rights in the sense of homesteading,
Yeah.
then you are committing an act of aggression.
Yeah. Well,
So,
Mhm.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, well, the problem is that nobody does own a lot of this land. I mean, this comes up time and time again. Nobody actually does own the land, so you get of course, the problem of the tragedy of the commons, and which is basically, if you don't know, where if there's a group of individuals who all are using a piece of land or property, and nobody actually owns it, then you will end up having an issue where everyone just consumes, but doesn't actually replenish any of the natural resources that are maybe in that land, or maintain the property as such. So when you have that, what ends up happening is basically you know a tragedy, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So the value is all sucked up and can never
right.
be used again, right? You're
Right.
creating an inefficiency. It could be used more, but it's not.
Yeah,
so what does that have to do with spraying chemicals that could poison the environment?
Well, I mean, for certain, I mean, well, one is if you're spraying chemicals into the environment and it ends up landing on someone's property and they own that property and it can be shown that they own that property, well, then obviously, and they don't want that to happen, well, then obviously they have a claim right there.
Right.
And they can go to, they're called DROs, a dispute resolution organization. They could potentially, in a free society, go to that sort of an organization that's kind of like a mega insurance company that kind of insures, kind of everything about your life in a way, and kind of complain to them, and they're going to have the policy on you that says, you get a certain amount of coverage for different things, and you're able to essentially, protect yourself against those kinds of things. And
in today's society, we don't have that, though, right? You're talking about the free society. The only option today we would have would be to go to the courts or whatever. But
yeah, so what ends up happening, really quick, so what ends up happening is today at least, is the government ends up owning the land, and so it just gets stuck, so that there's no way you can really do anything.
Yeah, actually, that's why I wonder if in a free society my job would be more problematic, because right now it seems that there's nothing that anybody can really do if I end up polluting another person's property, which I don't. I'm very careful. I'm only working on land that people want me to work on.
Is it public land or private land?
It's all private land. It's people pay the company through contracts, and that's what I don't have a problem with.
That's an example of it working, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Great. Okay. Maybe we should move on to another topic here. I found a link to an article from the U.S. saying that some lady. Hold on here. I'll pull this up really quickly. A lady. She was put into prison because her kids weren't going to school. They were skipping class. So she actually,
definitely know that.
She actually, tragically, she dies while in the jail cell. It says Elin Denino, 55, was a mother of 7 children. She was serving a 48-hour sentence because her children had multiple truancy violations. But some consider truancy violations should no longer be considered a criminal offense. Honestly, if your kids don't want to go to school, how is that your fault? How is that how can you send somebody to jail because their kids, who did they hurt? Did they hurt their children? No, they're not hitting their children. They're not locking them away. Actually, if you think about it, if they don't go to school and they're forced to go to school, who's hurting who here? Who's the aggressor? Who should be going to jail?
Beth, did you have anything to add to this? Because this is a very interesting topic, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's really tragic that that woman died in jail. But I mean, in the end, if your teenage children, they make choices of their own. If they're not going to school, there's only so much you can do, right? Mm-hmm. And in this case, I think it was wrong that, I think that those laws that are in support of sending parents of truant children to jail or prison are not effective, because they're not motivating the children to go to school. If they're rebellious and doing stuff like that, they probably don't care.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do anyone any good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I have an interesting perspective on this, because I had that issue when I was growing up. I mean, effectively truant all the time. But of course you just gotta be smart about it and say you're sick, right? You're sick. I mean, of course, no one wants to go to school, right? And that's it's not that I don't love learning. It's not that I don't want to expand my skill base in any way. No, I totally loved learning. And that's why I hated school, because you don't really learn anything in school. It's all rote memorization and bullshit critical thinking. Because the second that they try to teach you quote unquote critical thinking, and then the second that that you actually apply it I don't know, to the teacher or to the school itself or to the government or anything like that, then they're like, oh no, you can't do that. Don't apply things consistently, and it's just it ends up being it's totally ridiculous. Oh,
Yeah.
we got it. See, the dog agrees. The dog agrees. If the dog agrees, then oh, that's totally fine. Totally fine. It was perfect. So
Yeah, no, I think if you have to force children to go to school, you're like this is
I
a
would
really
like
hard
to
topic because oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Beth.
add to that though. Like I think it depends on the age of the children as well. Because if we're talking like, 5 and 6 year olds, you know what? Like that's as a parent, that's your responsibility. And
sure.
I'm not saying there should be laws on it, but you're at that point, you know, that is causing harm to your child. I'm not saying like,
Let's be clear though. Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
I had a hold
We're
on, hold
talking
on, hold on.
about government schools. We're
okay,
talking
because
about
But
government schools.
even forcing your kid to go to school, this is a nice topic because I talked to
Yeah.
what the hell is that guy's name?
Walter Block.
Walter Block. Thank you.
Yeah.
You
You're welcome.
okay? You must have watched it. I don't know.
Oh no,
so
I just know his position on this stuff.
yeah, right. So Walter Block, he has this position where it's okay to commit acts of aggression against your children if it's in their best interest because they don't know what's best for them.
I think,
I think that's a slippery slope, personally.
of course, yeah. Especially to word it that way, because in a sense, it's not actually an act of aggression. I mean, what that does, like saying something like that, what that should do, is kind of make the parent think more about what it. I mean, because if you say it like in the terms of defending the child, then I totally understand that. And if you want to call it an act of aggression,
he never said he called it an act of aggression. But I mean,
okay.
you're trying to defend. It's the argument where you're saying if a baby carriage is rolling into the street and you're in the middle of a crowd,
yeah.
Are you able to push through the crowd,
Okay.
shove the crowd, and make them aggress against them in order to save that one person, right?
Well, I think this comes down to the argument, like, if anyone who would, kind of be against something like that and be like, oh man, why'd you push me, man? After knowing that that's why you did it, I mean, they're kind of a dick,
well,
right?
but this is the
but
thing,
also,
though.
Yeah, go ahead.
As long as you can recognize that what you're doing is aggression, then at least you're on a one step forward. Like when you're forcing your kids to go to school, if you can recognize that this isn't the prime way to do this. I shouldn't have to force my kids to do this. Like I should be able to provide voluntary incentive.
Like it depends what the situation is, right? Because if the parent's doing it out of neglect, that's an issue. But if they're using alternative education methods for their child, they shouldn't be persecuted for that. It depends what the intent of the parent is. You know?
Exactly.
I agree. Now, we can't know necessarily the intent of anybody. I mean, to be completely honest, we can just know by their actions, right? But I mean, I totally agree. It does matter what the parents' mindset is here, and whether they actually do care about their child's safety. Because if they do, then I mean, they can't be with their child 100% all of the time, and so doesn't it make more sense to teach your kid reasoning skills and how to avoid cars and stuff? And I mean, of course, there's accidents it happens all the time, but we've got to kind of think of this, I think, go further back than just that quote unquote act of aggression, like Beth is stating, and kind of notice what is actually going on before then. Like, do you actually care about your children? What is your motive there? And if you do, there's kind of some things that would logically follow that you would want to teach your kids about this kind of stuff. And if you didn't know, well, I mean, it's kind of your responsibility to know these things as a parent. And you've got to make sure that your kids are safe if you're a parent. I mean, that's just, I mean, if you're a parent and you've taken on that responsibility, right? So
there's
trying
another
to give anybody
train of
genetic
thought that maybe
slavery.
we could talk about. Do parents have responsibility over their children?
Right.
Do they have to provide to them? Are children leeches? Are children
Right.
oppressors against them for asking for food and sustenance?
You have to remember who initially made the choice to create said children. If
Right,
you
right.
if you made your bed, now you can lie in it.
That is interesting. Yeah,
well, I mean, unless they did make you, but that's a different problem. But
oh, yeah. Yeah, I think.
All right, let's move on to another topic. Yeah, sure. What's this the Threat Management Center, Danny?
Okay, I just think that this is such an awesome idea. I had to mention it and bring it up in this show because if you haven't heard of it, you definitely should. It's called the Threat Management Center. It's basically this guy named Dale Brown who does all these different it's exactly what it says, threat management. He basically goes and it's just in Detroit where, I mean, obviously it's the oh, Beth, we got you. We got your camera. Sweet. We were having issues with Beth's camera earlier, so it's cool she finally got it to work. So Threat Management Center.
Right.
Basically, Dale Brown started this company because he noticed that there was just a lack of forethought and caring. This is kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, what was your intention when you're trying to defend whoever it is? And I think what he ended up noticing is that the police officers, they didn't give a shit about. I mean, to be frank, they just didn't give a shit about the people that they were supposed to be, protecting. And so he ended up just starting a company to combat that, and so to speak.
I think I've heard of this before. Yeah. So this guy is basically, for lack of a better term, gun for hire kind of guy.
Sort of.
He doesn't actually have. Yeah, in the most broad sense of it, he's a security kind of service for neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. Thank you for helping me get to that point.
Can I ask a question about that, though?
Yeah, sure.
So is he allowed to carry a gun? Like, where is that?
Absolutely. My understanding is that he is allowed to carry a gun.
Okay.
I think he might have. I can't remember if he used to be either in the military or. I'm sure he has some sort of background.
I think he used to be a part of law enforcement.
Right.
But I'm glad to see that he went to the voluntary route.
Yeah, he said, "Fuck that shit."
Yeah.
Yeah, because he even talks about it. He says, his philosophy is emphasizing the importance of deterring the threat, and by noticing the actions of the person instead of just ignoring them and shooting them anyway, right? So
violence is costly, right? Violence.
Exactly. But
you can't afford to have that happen. So you've got to prevent that, and that's exactly why free markets are more better when it comes to threat management and things like that, because police officers today, they're whatever happens to them is socialized, right? We all have to pay for it no matter what. We have to pay for it if the cop gets killed and his what's it called gets paid out, his pension or whatever, and his family gets paid out for damage pay or whatever, and then, but with Threat Management Center, he's got to absorb those costs himself, right?
Right.
If he wants to put that back on the consumer, his prices are going to have to go up, and people won't use his service anymore.
Right, and also, yeah, exactly. People won't use this service anymore. I think it's important to note that he does utilize some public services, police services, and stuff. He works with the police at least, right? So, but I think this is mostly because he absolutely has to. He actually says in one of his, or a couple of his videos, he doesn't actually like working with most police. Like he just, like if somebody comes to him and wants to work at his establishment, he'll say no if they're just one of those, gung ho police officers and just or military servicemen, because he has a very thoughtful process that he goes through when he does hire somebody. They've got to actually care and about protecting the person and not just enforcing the law, right? And so
I think this paves the way for more of these types of things to start popping up.
I would love to see some more information on that. Maybe I'll do some research and get back to you guys about this. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention this just to get it out there, because I think it's so important to note that this is what's going on. That I mean, Detroit is one of the most shitty places right now in the United States, at least, right? And people are always trying to say government, government, government. It does this, this, this. Well, actually, it doesn't, because if you look at what it did to Detroit, liberals should just be out of their minds in cognitive dissonance right now with this kind of stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I would say it's important to note this stuff, and if people say stuff like, oh, he's also working with police, well, it's not like he wants to. He has to. I mean,
Yeah, there's laws in place that they're going to start enforcing either way. So sometimes you gotta buckle a little bit, or else you're going to be running your business isn't going to be successful, right? It's like opening a bar. You can't say that person is terrible because they check IDs
right.
for when people are coming into their bar. Well, they're going to get fucked. They're going to get handed over to the government, and at least they're trying to provide a service for people, there's an extent, right? You can be sniffing the government's ass and always trying to be like number one and never getting their bad books, right? Or you can kind of sneakily make your way through and work with them when you absolutely have to, right?
Absolutely. And I also to mention, he's also, as far as I'm aware so far, never had anyone die or be seriously injured in his care. So I think that's something very interesting to point out. He's never actually had. I mean, and he's worked with thousands of people, and to protect them from different threats, be they like an abusive spouse, boyfriend, gang members, that kind of stuff. He also protects businesses, and that's where he gets the majority of his money, is from protecting businesses. Now, he takes that.
So the cops aren't always going and checking up on these businesses? They're not actually doing their job? What?
No, it's unfathomable, right? But he uses this money that he gets from the businesses to then go and support lower income areas that are obviously rife with crime, and this is mostly because of the government. If you can trace it back almost every time to some government regulation or something. I mean,
the drug war.
Drug war, regulations on doing like barbary, or I guess to have a barber shop. You have to have some massive amount of
even the incentives from welfare.
Exactly. Oh, not to mention welfare, probably one of the worst offenders here. So yeah, he's totally totally got this under control and you know isn't shooting people's dogs in the process. So I'd say more proud of that guy.
Right on. I have another topic here to go over. In Canada, we have just made the sale. Prostitution was never illegal before, but the purchase of prostitution or prostitutes is now illegal, but the sale is not. Very strange thing that's happening. How does that work?
Is that if I was a prostitute, I'm allowed to be a prostitute, but nobody is allowed to let me prostitute to them?
Exactly. They're trying to let people that they're trying to be more lenient on the victims, they say, in the prostitution world, which I don't believe that every prostitute is a victim. I believe that there are some prostitutes out there that are just in it for themselves and they wanted to go down that road. That's not all of them.
There must be, but like the bigger issue would be like human trafficking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the victim, but that doesn't. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I would say, like, I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Like, it's almost as crazy as what happened in Hawaii with the police officers that were allowed to, I guess they're allowed to engage in sexual acts with the prostitutes to get have you guys heard of this?
No.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Man, it's insane. Like they're allowed
Hawaii actually.
Yeah. They're allowed to break the law in order to catch people, quote unquote, breaking the law, right? I mean, it's one of these things. I mean, there are no rules, right? When there's a government, there are no rules. It's absolutely, it is chaos, because you cannot have a system where those who are supposed to enforce the system are actually excluded or are totally exempt from the system. It's just and I mean they're functionally exempt, right?
Right to the other story that we started off with: police officers allowing to carry guns and the public not. You create these conflicts of this person has a badge and they have more rights, like, and there's a huge movement.
What's that?
Like all the badge does is it gives them the right to break the law. In order to support the law.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good point. It's absolutely insane.
I think there is a movement going on as well for prostitution to become legalized. I wouldn't care if it's on the books or it's not on the books, if it's law or it's not, or if it's against the law or it's not against the law. I just think that peaceful people should be allowed to do what they want. I don't agree with you can have a pimp or a Johnny or whatever you call that guy, as long as that guy isn't forcing that person or manipulating that person into doing that.
And we all know this.
But that's kind of the purpose of a pimp, is that they own the girl, right?
Not always, because girls can't get their own. Sometimes girls can't get their own customers, so they look for a pimp to help them get more customers. Which, in a truly free society, if you were doing it completely voluntarily and completely knowingly, you could have that work. But a lot of why it's bad today is because it's illegal, and they had the Johnny, the pimp, is trying to look out for himself, and he's gonna. And if that girl goes astray and she's not found where he wants her to be, he's gonna start a beating. Like,
you sound like you have maybe some experience with this, Garrett.
Garrett,
let's see your pinky ring. Let's see your pinky ring. and your powder. Slap them hoes, right?
I watched a good movie, actually. It was called Linda, or it was called Lovelace. I don't know if you remember or have you heard of an actress by the name of Linda Lovelace.
Oh, yeah.
She famous for the movie Deep Throat.
That's relatively new, correct? Yeah, it's a newer movie.
Well, yeah, it's a newer
movie about
movie.
her
It's
is
newer. Yeah, back in the 70s,
Yeah.
and she had a Johnny pretty much, and he
Nice.
was he was the what the hell is he was her boyfriend, and he would kind of pimp her out, and like this was against her will. So I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
that's
okay.
because yeah, right.
Because it was
So,
illegal, she had no avenues to get out of that type of situation. Because the second that she admitted that this is what she was doing, she would be punished for it, right? And you know, so it just locks. You're right. It locks people. The laws actually lock people in these types of situations where they can't get out. And it's does the
well,
exact opposite.
that's why Canada. I'll give it to them. It's pragmatic. I guess the word is, or it's kind of logical in the sense where they're making
They're trying to take steps in the right
one
direction.
half. Right. They're exactly. But I think that they've half-stepped it, and that's a bad idea. I think that they should just full-step it and let it all become legal completely, so we could have voluntary transactions between peaceful individuals. Voluntary Virtues Network. Everyone, welcome.
I want unicorns and spaceships and all that stuff too, Garrett. It's unfortunate we have to actually joke about this stuff, and it's like it's very real though, because oh man, I mean, and it's disheartening and disturbing that this is the sort of society we live in, and but on that somber note, I mentioned spaceships. I don't know if you guys know anything about the gaming world. I just thought I'd mention this if you guys want to talk about this for a couple minutes. There's again, and this does have to do with libertarianism to some degree, because I think it's a way that the gaming industry has allowed IP to become obsolete as an idea, really, and as because it is bogus.
How so? I'm really curious on that, because I think IP is really prevalent in the gaming industry right now.
It absolutely is, but there's this sort of, because it's IP is protected by the government to basically give the gaming institutions and or gaming.
Hold on,
gaming
IP for everybody who isn't down with the lingo. IP is intellectual property.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask.
Oh, sorry about that, Beth. Intellectual property, basically, it's a bogus concept. It doesn't actually exist. It can't possibly exist, because property, I mean, it has to be able to be enforced, right? You have to, and I don't mean enforced by like a government. I mean, like, you have to be able to defend it, right? For it to actually really be property, I think. And
I agree, man. As soon as an idea leaves your mouth, it's no longer yours. If you want the idea to be kept, then you don't tell anybody, because you can't own an idea. Language is an idea. Nobody owns language. Yeah, sorry, go on. You were on a roll there.
Please, you were explaining it perfectly, so it's not a big deal. But so essentially, IP in the gaming industry, the way that it works in the gaming industry is, if you take, obviously characters, trademarks, assets from a game, the actual assets, like the code, can actually be protected, and it doesn't make any sense, because again, like you say, it's a copy of something, and if you copied like somebody's word, I mean, if you're that they speak, it comes out of their mouth, it enters your ear canal, processed by your brain, but by the time it's in your brain, it's no longer their word, it's actually your specific copy of that word, right? So it's the same thing. I look at it like recipes. So you've got a recipe for a hamburger, right? And Stick with me here, guys.
I
Stick with me
thought
here.
Beth cringe on that one. A recipe for hamburger.
Oh, my apologies. I don't mean to offend any vegan or vegetarian or animal rights if that's what it is. But just
No,
for the
it's
sake
because
of the
it's really simple to make.
oh right okay I got you.
It could be a veggie burger if one wants to. That's
well,
what
you notice all of the different hamburgers in like the fast food industry, they all taste different, right? And
Right.
they all have their secret recipes and stuff. And I don't know if there's any laws that could actually possibly, because it's such a you know uh, uh, it's all kind of opinion, and it's not really you can't really say
there is
that this
laws in the
hamburger
sense
tastes
that you
exactly like that hamburger.
They have their trademark.
Yeah, they have their
You could
trademark,
say, right, like I couldn't sell a Big Mac, right?
Right,
Like,
you couldn't call it a Whopper,
right.
you couldn't call it a Big Mac, but you can pretty much sell the exact same thing, you know, 3 buns or
In a free
whatever it is.
society, you should be allowed to, though, right?
Yeah,
you should
absolutely.
be allowed to say this is a Whopper. Here, I'll sell it to you for $2 instead of $4.
So this is exactly. So this is how I look at it. If you've got like a recipe to a Big Mac or whatever it is, you don't own that recipe the second that it's out in the world, right? So you can't say that, I mean, because you've written it down, but you've given it to somebody. You didn't, give them any sort of contract where they have like a non-disclosure agreement or anything like that. That doesn't exist. And I promise I'll get to Star Citizen. But I think this is important to understand first. So there's no really way to put it, I think, other than as a recipe. So this is how I look at it. There's kind of a general category. You have a burger, which includes all sorts of types of burgers. You have computer games, which includes RPGs, MMORPGs, flight sims, first-person shooters, fighting games, that kind of stuff. Now, a recipe for a Whopper is a recipe for a Whopper. We kind of all know that concept. We know what it is, whatever the recipe actually is, right? For a recipe for a game would be the disk of the game, or the copy of the instructions for the computer that are supposed to go into the computer, and the computer processes it and then gives you the game. And so Morrowind's source code, so to speak, and the assets that are encoded in the disk, you would call that sort of the recipe. This is kind of the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And your computer is the one that processes it. Now, the cook is the one that processes, so to speak, the Whopper and produces the Whopper. And with Morrowind, the game, or whatever, Oblivion, Skyrim, these are all Elder Scrolls games, it would produce, the computer would produce that game. So that's and that is the finished product. That's you enjoying the game just as you would sit and enjoy the Whopper, right? So that's kind of how I look at that. It's a kind of, I don't think it's too convoluted. I think you can kind of, see how that works. But anyway, the way that this works with Star Citizen is they've actually done crowdsourcing. So they don't have to sell the game. They are, but they don't have to sell the game necessarily before it's made, or after it's made. I mean, they don't have to sell the game after it's made. And basically, it's going to be this huge open world or semi-open world space sim where you get to fly around in your ship and play with your friends, and there's going to be like massive ships at a certain point. If you've played EVE Online, it's similar to that for our viewers. And so it's just going to be such a freaking awesome game. And the guy who's doing the game has produced games in the past, and what he did is he raised the most amount of money in crowdsourcing ever. And I think this is the way forward for things like media. because it's kind of this incorporeal thing. You can't really pin it down. You can't really say, oh, this is what this person owns. And so basically what the artist has to do now is essentially hold his his content hostage in a way. And I mean that, not in a bad way, just actually in a good way. So they essentially say, hey, I'm not going to give you my product until you give me some money for it, because I gotta live, right? And there you end up getting rid of the issue with all of these IP regulations and stuff in one fell swoop. They can, of course, take donations after they've released it, but you kind of can't control it.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think there's a movement starting too where artists, instead of, I guess, like holding their music hostage, are instead making it available to people and instead asking for donations, I guess, like as in recognition, like I am an artist, this is how I make my money.
Right,
but
and
I'm not going to hold my stuff hostage. If you want it, like you can take it, but it would be really great if you could help me out too, right?
Right. The thing with with crowdsourcing, and absolutely, I think they would play off each other. So Star Citizen, they're definitely going to be taking, money for the game after it's released, and I guess technically the way they're doing it is, kind of a standard model after that. But right now they're doing all donations, so it's all pledges, all that kind of stuff. So eventually, what's going to happen is.
Sorry, oh my god.
It's all good. Eventually, what's going to happen is you're going to get a finished product, which is the game, right? And you're going to be able to do that. So essentially,
I think that road is definitely the future when it comes to you propose an idea, see if people like it.
Right.
They give you the money. But this is my question. Afterwards, is he gonna claim what we were talking about before? Is he gonna claim property rights in the sense that if somebody else tries to sell the driver for that game, right?
Right. The source code or whatever. Yeah. So exactly.
But he's already made his money though.
Exactly. He's already made his money, so he's a little less worried about that kind of stuff. So. Right now they've raised, like I said, the most ever of any crowdsourcing ever. $45 million, $45+ million they've raised to make this game.
That's going to be one hell of a game.
It is going to be one hell of a game. I'm going to be doing some gameplay of it soon here, and so you guys can check it out on my channel. But let me just end this with, yes, he is probably going to, if somebody tries to just jack the game and just say, hey, this is Star Citizen, we're going to pay us this money and we'll give you Star Citizen, and it's kind of fake, right? Then
I think by now he could probably just say, hey, that's not the real guy, give me this money or whatever, and that's more advertising for him.
Yeah, and the servers and stuff that he's got set up, they're all specifically designed for that game, and so you probably couldn't really run it very well without that. But yeah, so that's I kind of went on this whole diatribe about it, but I think it's a really, really interesting prospect for all content creators, including us at this point, right? Mm-hmm. I mean,
I'll make a quick shout out here to an artist that is long up and coming. His name is Little Bars. Go search him up. He puts out everything for free. Everything. He's got thousands and thousands of songs. And yeah, sure, a lot of it might be not the greatest stuff, but he puts it all out there and he makes millions. Just millions. He doesn't sell a single CD. He doesn't even barely ask for donations, but he goes and he plays shows. I think that's where the future of live things are going, is that you either got to be good or
absolutely.
You're not going to get paid.
We're in demand. So, it doesn't necessarily mean you're good, right? You just got to be in demand, right? Because you said this guy isn't all the best, right?
But that equates. No, he is the rawest rapper alive. I'm going to say that right now. He is, for sure. Anyways, guys, that just about wraps up our show here. so you can come back and join us 7 to 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 to 10 Eastern Time, and 6 to 7 Pacific time.
Standard Time, yeah. See you guys later.
All right. All right. Cheers, guys. Have a good night.
Yep. Peace.